Every day of my life, my years in Congress, my years as a governor, my years as vice president, I've sought to advance the cause of a strong national defense, a limited federal government, traditional moral values, and a strong America.
Abortion has become such a contentious debate since the overturning of Roe versus Wade. But you have said that the cause of restoring the sanctity of life to the center of American law is the calling of our time. What does that look like in a post-Roe world? In my college years, back in 1978, when I came to make a personal decision to accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and when I opened up the Bible, I read verses like, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and I knit you together in your mother's womb, and I set before you life and death, blessings and curses, now choose life." And I knew as a young believer that I needed to make his cause my cause, and I really believe for the author of life, there's no more important cause than life. But I have to tell you, to have been vice president in the most pro-life administration in history, and the administration that appointed 3 of the justices that sent Roe versus Wade to the ash heap of history, is something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. In a very real sense, we've given the American people a new beginning for life. But as I've been quick to say, Lyndsay, we're not at the end of the cause of life. We're just at the end of the beginning. And now I think it's incumbent upon believers to respond to that calling of our time and make the case with principle and compassion to restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law in every state in the nation. I think it's that combination of principle and compassion that'll win hearts and minds. Just to be clear for our viewers, you would support and welcome a 15-week ban if it was put before you? I certainly would if I had any job in Washington, D.C. where it was put before me. And if I was a member of Congress, as I was for 12 years of my career, I'd certainly support that. It really represents a minimum standard that's more reflective of most Western countries in the world. I mean, the Democratic Party today in America supports abortion on demand all the way up to the moment of birth. That's a position that's held by less than 15% of the American people. As we're on the topic of life, there's a new Gallup poll out that talks about how Americans are very concerned about the safety of their lives, their children's lives. Crime is running rampant in our country, and it was not too long ago that not too far from here, a man walked into a mall and shot and killed 9 people, including a 3-year-old little boy, wounding many others. I know that the Second Amendment is sacred. Our Constitution is sacred. But as we've been talking about, so is human life. So not as a Republican, not as a conservative even, but as a Christian, how do you lead this conversation in a way that puts life at the forefront of the debate? Well, I think we have to recognize that we have an epidemic of crime in our major cities today that claims lives literally every week of the year, and we have a border that essentially is open. The Mexican cartels have operational control of our border, and because of the policies of this administration, we've had millions of people coming across our border, not only burdening communities, but also fueling the spread of fentanyl into virtually every community in the country, which fuels a crime wave. And so we need to fund and equip law enforcement with the resources that they need. But let me say, to speak to your question as well, when you think about the tragedy that occurred in Allen, Texas, at the shopping mall, and literally the nearly 200 lives have been lost this year alone to mass shootings. I have to tell you, as a father and as a grandfather, I'm getting tired of it. And I think we need decisive action. We don't need to return to the same tired arguments over gun control and the impasse in Washington, D.C. Our founders put the right to keep and bear arms for law-abiding citizens in the Constitution for a reason. It's there. And I personally believe that firearms in the hands of law-abiding citizens makes our communities more safe, not less safe. And I think it's absolutely essential that we
generate leadership in this country that will advance real policies and solutions. I think we ought to harden every public school in America. I mean, the time has come for us to make resources available at the national level to have an armed security officer in every public and private school in America. There's no reason why parents should ever worry when they drop their children off to school whether the tragedy might ensue. And finally, I think the reality is of so many of the people that engage in this kind of mindless mass shooting violence, at its core, there are profound mental health issues that are not addressed, not identified. And the truth is, you're too young to remember, but the reality is in the 1970s, America in every state walked away from institutional mental health care. And today, many people that are caught up in homelessness are actually people for whom there's no institutional care. I think we've got to make a recommitment as a nation to institutional mental health care so that families that have a family member who they perceive is on a downward spiral to be a potential danger to themselves or others literally has institutions that they can appeal to and utilize to prevent that person from going from bad to worse and endangering others. And so I think a combination, supporting law enforcement, expedited reviews, securing our schools, these are the kind of solutions, along with a new national commitment to mental health care, that will get at this issue in a very real and a substantial way. I
know every person who interviews you wants to know the question of when you're going to make an announcement. Obviously, I know that you and Karen have been praying about it. You've said it'll come probably by the end of June, which we're about a month out from that. But I'm going to spare you the question here today. But I would like you to tell our audience, if you choose not to run to be president, what can we expect you to be doing? We're going to continue to fight for all the conservative values that have always defined my career. You know, I joined the Republican Party when Ronald Reagan was in the White House. And every day of my life, my years in Congress, my years as a governor, my years as vice president, I've sought to advance the cause of a strong national defense, a limited federal government, traditional moral values, and a strong America at home and abroad. And whatever the future holds for the Pences, I promise you we'll stay in that cause because I think it's the American cause. But I must tell you, we've received a lot of encouragement around the country. And sometime before June is out, I expect you'll know what our plans are. All right. Well, when you're ready to make an announcement, you're welcome to do it right here at TBN at Centerpoint. We would love to have you back for that announcement, but we'll be looking forward to that time. Lyndsay, I promise you, if we have an announcement to make, I'll be back on TBN on Centerpoint. All right. We'll look forward to that, sir.